Welcome to this video. This is Ilya, and in this video we'll be breaking down something very interesting and it's called fulfillment operating system. I think it's most of the time overlooked by many businesses, and I want just to dive into this and explain why this is important, why you would want to consider building fulfillment operating system in your company. And we're going to start with just reviewing a couple of things. The first is the reasons why we want to build it. And I have a slide over here that shows just all the chaotic stuff that might be happening in your company, and most of the time is happening in many companies out there. And I even have my personal experience that I will share with you in a minute. But just to go through this one by one, we have last minute messages. And you can understand, like, sometimes you just get a message from someone and it can be one of your team members just saying, hey, by the way, I forgot to tell you something, or there is one more detail that you need to know about, and it just messes up your whole work. You just say, could you, like, why didn't you tell me this about this before? Like, why would you tell about this now? I have to redo my whole stuff. And then missing context. It's also the same thing, right? It's just something pops up and they say, hey, I forgot to tell you about this. And we're like, come on, I've done my whole work and I need to redo it just because you missed that little thing and it impacts the whole project. The other thing is back and forth emails. Now, I think it relates to many people, and people like kind of feel that pain as well as I do. And it's just like, you would just email each other and you would say like, hey, I need this from you and I need that from you. And then the person would respond, hey, I also need this from you, like, or I'm sending this to you that I forgot to send you yesterday. And it just goes back and forth forever. You have like email threads for like 200 emails in a thread. It's like crazy. And the last piece is when we are fed up with all the emails, we set up a session, we set up a video call, and there are tons of meetings happening. And about my personal experience, I used to work in a big corporation. And when I came in, the first thing that I noticed is that people are always on the calls. They constantly spend their time in video meetings, like in video calls. So they had like, and I asked the guy and I said like, how much time do you spend like per day? How much time do you spend on video calls? He said like, I spend 6-7 hours regularly, like every single day. I would come to work and I would spend 6-7 hours, and then I have like 1-2 hours just to do the stuff I have to do, and then the next day is just repeat. So I was so amazed about this stuff, and this happens in a lot of companies. And again, it's just like so painful to understand that you have to spend like 80% of your day just talking to other people instead of actually doing the work that you have to do. And what's interesting about this is it was like 50-person team, and I asked him, and we had a lot of team members like offshore, like in other countries, and I asked him like, if you were not on the meetings all day, would you be able to do all the work yourself instead of like outsourcing it to 10 other people in other countries? He said, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, we would be much faster and much more efficient with doing our work, and we would deliver results in time. It would be just much more pleasant experience for everyone. So it was like a little bit interesting to see that inside a big company. But let's go back and understand now, where do we want to move? So what's the ideal goal? So what's the end result for us? And again, the ideal result is just to bring more structure, is just to have structured communication, is just to understand clear ownership and handoffs. And when I'm saying this is just for people to understand what they're responsible for. Because in that company I told you about, people didn't want to take responsibility. They would just like send an email and forget about this, or like go and spend like 1 hour on a session and not do anything. So clear ownership and handoffs is extremely important. And then also status of deliverables in real time. This is just something that like saves amazing, like incredible amount of time. You, instead of like sending again those back and forth emails or having multiple conversations with people, you can just have a single system where you see the status of all the deliverables in real time. So instead of asking people, you can just go into the system and see, this is the project and this is the status of, this is the deliverable and this is the status of that deliverable. So again, this is our ideal goal and kind of the end goal of why we would want to build a fulfillment operating system. And before we jump into how we do it, I want to quickly discuss the domino effect. I'm not sure if this is like the actual name of this, but it's just, and I put this in little dominoes here. It's kind of hard to read. I didn't think about this, but hopefully you can see and the reason I want to discuss this is just, again, why do we want to build that fulfillment system? And if you start with your service and product fulfillment falls short, right? So clients start feeling not like something doesn't work right, or like, again, you still, there is a lot of back and forth emails, there is constant conversations, and people are just spending hours on during the meetings, right, without doing the thing. When this happens is your customers start losing trust. And what I mean by that is just like people feel when something is not right. People feel when things are not going the right direction. People feel when things are not very structured. So it's natural for us to feel that energy from each other. And if your team members are not structured and are not doing things in a structured manner, again, your customers will just sense it. The next thing is your team can lose momentum and motivation. And I think it's even more important sometimes than customers losing trust. Because when everything that's happening in your company is chaotic, when you don't have structures and systems in place to let your people do their best, then even your best players are gonna just burn out. And sometimes people just quit. People quit just because of all the chaotic things that are happening in the companies they work in. And by the way, this is one of the reasons I quit the company that I used to work for and that I told you about. So this is even based on the personal experience. And then growth slows down. About the growth, you might say that if we keep selling more, that's going to be fine. Even if we do not deliver the best quality product or service, we're going to be fine because we can bring more customers in. But again, and this is not something that I came up with. This is just, I think, a general understanding of business or general ideas in business is that business becomes more valuable, or the business that retains clients for the longest is more valuable to the buyer. Essentially, if someone wants to buy your company, they would look at how long you can retain your customer. And client retention is directly linked to how well you can provide services and value to those customers. So this is why, even though if you're saying we can sell more, again, your fulfillment is very, very crucial and can be just that bottleneck towards growing the company and going to the next level. Now, I understood this domino effect. Let's dive into the fulfillment ladder. Now, what this describes is, I think, is just now answering the question of how do we get to the end result? How do we get to the point where we want to be? And I believe this kind of 4 levels that I have mostly in my head are general to the public, so people know about them. If I were asked to you about these things, you would think, yeah, that makes sense. Like I think about this way as well. I'm not communicating that much to my customers, even probably I should. But the way I break it down is essentially, again, we start at the ad hoc level. And what that means is basically, at this point, it's probably you working yourself or you have a small team, and the processes are not there. So there is no structure. You're just basically getting things done. And we have to get through this stage in order to get to the level 2. So there's nothing bad about it. It's just the size of the business is smaller. Again, mostly 1-person, 2-person team, and things are just very chaotic. But it's fine. Again, all businesses start that way, but we have to go through that phase in order to get to the level 2, which is repeatable. What repeatable means is now you have a couple more team members in your team. The projects that you're working with are a little bit more structured. You understand the repeatability. You see some sequences. You see that I can do step 1, 2, 3, 4 for all this project. So it's not going to change if I bring more customers. So you start feeling more in the flow, and your team members start feeling more like part of something organized and structured, even though this structure is still fragile and it still lives in your hat, in your team hat, in your team members' hat. So at this point, there might be not a lot structure, but it's still, again, you just start feeling that repeatability, you start feeling that flow when you deliver the project. Now, when we go to the systemized level, which is level 3, what it means is basically you transition from having all the processes in your head to having them documented somewhere. What I say is just make those processes alive. So make them live somewhere. Make them not only just something that lives in your mind, but also something that lives in some documents, lives on a picture, lives on a whiteboard, somewhere that is like some sort of tangible, right? That you can see, that you can feel, that you can discuss with other people. And the systemized approach just brings more structure. Now you're gonna have more documentation in place. Now you're gonna have some SOPs. Now you're gonna have more cleaner communication between team members because people understand what's going on. People have a bigger vision of like, okay, so how do we deliver stuff from the beginning till the very end? What's also interesting about level 3 is that at this point, technically, if someone new comes into your team, they should be able to deliver the services to your customers. Obviously with the help of someone supervising them or like maybe helping them do the actual job. but they should be able to find all the information they require to bring value to your customers without you training them for a couple of months, right? And again, that period obviously is needed for them to become better. But what I'm saying is they technically can just take a playbook, they can take documentation, read through it, get trained, maybe a couple of days, maybe a week, and then start being part of the process, start understanding what's the flow, who is responsible for what, and what's their place in that process. And the last piece is gonna be the scalable piece. That's when you start multiplying the good that is in your process. I always say that, and it can be referred to like bringing automation or implementing AI or implementing some integration solutions in your process and into your systems. And I always say that those softwares and those applications are multipliers to your process. So if you have to do the work right when on level 3 in order to go to the level 4. Until you get it nailed on level 3, you cannot go to level 4 because you don't want to multiply the bad. You don't want to multiply the chaos. And you do not want to jump from level 2 to level 4, because if you have on level 2 very little structure, level 4, that bad component of the process is just going to be multiplied. So there is no point jumping and kind of stepping over level 3 straight to level 4. All right. So as we discuss this, the next piece is now understand. So now we understand kind of the step-by-step of how we're going to move our fulfillment operating system through these levels and getting to that level 4 of scalability. Now the question is, why is fulfillment system so important to your business? Because I understand you as a business owner or senior executive, you might be spending a lot of time, and you probably should be spending a lot of time selling, right? You should go out there, you should focus on marketing, on your outreach, on conversions, and that's obvious. Again, I'm not against that, I'm doing that myself. But in marketing, there is a concept of hacking. Like you would, if you see your competitors running a successful ad, what you would normally do, you would just copy that ad, right, and run it yourself. And you would probably use the same channel where they run that ad just to get the same results. And again, that's just the competition, right? You would look at someone's website or someone's landing page. If it performs well and you have some data behind this to back it up, then you would just replicate that and you would create kind of similar web page to get similar results. Now, with all those components, like when you're investing into sales and marketing, at the end of the day, those things can be replicated. This is why you have to constantly innovate, you have to constantly come up with ideas, you have to constantly test things. And there is just one component in sales that's very hard to replicate, and this is called email outreach or cold calling. The reason why it's hard to replicate is because you can't see it. It's because paid ads, you can just go and you can see on Facebook what's your competitor's best paid ad out there. But with cold calling, you're not sure what scripts do they use. Like, where do they get the list of all the customers, right, or prospects? The same with cold email. It's just completely invisible to the outside world. The same happens with the fulfillment system. Is when you build your fulfillment system and when you invest into structuring and organizing your internal work, it's very hard for someone else, for your competitor or for someone on the market, just to easily look inside your company and see what you're doing, what tools you're using, what the process is behind your successful delivery or fulfillment of the service. What automations are you using? Again, it's all proprietary. It's not available to the outside world. This is why I think it's the comparison between fulfillment system is like building your own mod. So in a sense, it's your competitive advantage, it's your competitive edge. No one else can have the same fulfillment system as you have. And again, it's going to be very, very hard. Even if they want to replicate it, it's going to be just extremely hard to go and find out what you're doing. So this is why having this comparison like fulfillment system, user mode, I think is very, very relevant and helps you visualize of again, how do you think about fulfillment system? Why do you want to spend time even structuring that part of your business? And this image, I hope, describes it well. Now, after we understood, again, the concepts behind fulfillment system, why do we need it, and the levels of how we can build it, I want just to go through 3 most overlooked fixes that you can start implementing today. I'm not going to go into detail of how exactly and a kind of step-by-step and multi-phase approach of how I would run this kind of projects, just because we don't have enough time in this video, but hopefully I get to shoot this video very, very soon for you so you can see kind of how I structure this project, and again, try to do this yourself. But I want to share 3 simple steps that you can start doing without even hiring anyone, without paying for any subscription or any software. It's just about you meeting with your people, your team members, and figuring out these questions. As simple as that. So you can start doing it today, you can start doing it this week, whenever you have time. Again, you can start doing it without paying anyone, so it's not going to cost you anything. Map who does what along your process, not your org chart. This is going to be the step 1. And essentially what it tells you is that you need to agree with your people what their responsibilities are. I told you at the very beginning that the reason I quit the first that big company is just because people didn't take accountability for the things they were doing. They were not accountable for anything. So that was very frustrating. And I think one of the reasons why is because their responsibilities were dictated by their organizational chart, by their departments. They would say, you are a part of this department, this is your list of responsibilities. But the responsibilities in your company, and again, this is just my suggestion, should be dictated not by the department or where in the organizational chart they are located, but by the process that they take part in. So essentially, if they are part of your fulfillment process, all those steps in the process that they have to do in order to fulfill and provide value to the client is going to be their responsibility. And basically, when you lay out and when you visualize that process, you can very clearly see of who is responsible for what. And this exercise is just going to help you and your team members get on the same page and say, player A is going to be responsible for these 3 steps, player B is going to be responsible for the next 2 steps. Again, just make it very clear and very easy to communicate to everyone what's expected from them. The second is defining clear handoffs at every step of the process. And the reason why it's important is because when you are doing and when you're completing the process, most of the time the steps that you visualize are completed well enough. You are professionals in what you're doing, right? Many times people have spent years doing some work when we started doing this exercise with them. So I'm not trying to dictate how they should perform their work, but we're just trying to structure it better. But what I'm trying to say is that the way you do this step might be fine. It's just, again, you do it the best that you can. The issue that's happening is between the steps, is when you start is the handoff when it's happening, is when you start taking information that you produced in your step and giving to someone else for them to take it and complete their step. And this is where many issues happen. This is why I have this step here, and it's very simple to resolve. It's just as simple as just sitting down, understanding that process that you have from step 1, and then saying, hey, player A is going to perform this step, but now after that step, it's going to be player B's turn. So player A, you need to prepare this, and this information in order for player B to complete his step successfully. It does 2 things. First, it lets player A understand what's expected from him in terms of the outputs of his step. So he clearly understands he needs to deliver this, and this is going to be the format in which he needs to give it to player B. Second, for player B, it just lets him know that player A knows and cares about his success during his step. So it just, again, increases that level of communication and makes it easier for everyone to understand how their roles are linked together and how they would want to cooperate together. And the third simple step is just avoid automating the chaos and instead start bringing structure first. For this step, and we just mentioned when looking at the different levels of building the fulfillment system, we mentioned that we do not want to start multiplying the bad parts of our process. We want to build structure first. And this is the step exactly about that. What I mean by that is you can even start building structures without bringing in new tools. You can start bringing structures just by visualizing the process, just by communicating what's expected from everyone else from step 1 and 2 that we have on this slide, and just setting the right expectations with people. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to bring in some software to track your projects or some automation tools to make it work faster, even though it helps. But structure is not necessarily a software, right? We can find structure within the processes that we have in the company, and just by communicating with your team members and setting the right level of expectation. Now, I'm not saying you should not use software. Sometimes I suggest that companies use software for tracking their projects, for tracking their tasks. That is an essential component, but it's not the only one that you should care about. Again, better set up the right communication in your team and just understand the responsibilities and set up the right handoffs in your process than just bringing some random system in place and trying to set it up so it solves all your problems. It's not gonna, you have to start from the basics. You have to start with the foundation, which is your processes, and only then you can build on top of that, building your system and then software. Now, these are just the 3 simple steps that I told you about. Obviously, there are many more steps, and again, I'll try to shoot this video soon about how I would approach the whole initiative about this improvement and improving the fulfillment system and building the fulfillment operating system. But at this point, just try to go through these 3 steps. Again, you don't need to have a lot of time. I imagine this can be done in a couple of 1-hour sessions. It's better to have the live conversation with people. You can even do this on a whiteboard, but then after you complete that, just make sure you write it down somewhere. And the way you do it doesn't really matter. You can use a tool, you can use a mirror board, you can use a whiteboard, you can use a piece of paper. The main idea is just to let your team communicate between each other and agree on these things. So that's about the steps. And the last phrase that I want to finish this video with is going to be: poor fulfillment is a tax on your business, and structured fulfillment is compound interest. So let's build that structure. I'll see you in the next one.